IR Today, brought to you by the National Investor Relations Institute, dedicated to advancing global investor relations practices, and Knowledge Partner host, corporate board member.
Hello and welcome to IR Today. My name is Jeff Morgan and I'm President and CEO of the National Investor Relations Institute. And today's topic for IR Today is talking about 2013. And we have a special guest, our new chairman of NIRI. And our chair this coming year is Hulus Alpay, who is Vice President of Medidata Solutions. And Hulus has a great background and we'll get into that. So welcome, Hulus. It's great for you to be here.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here as well.
So your experience coming in and taking over as NIRI's chair is really unique in the sense that you're not only sitting in the IR seat, but you've been in past work lives, you've been in the counselor seat, you've been in the service provider seat, and I think you've had a great view of how IR has evolved over the years. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, it's been an incredible journey. I hope there's still plenty more in the journey, but NIRI's been such an integral part of my career that I'm really looking forward to giving back to the community that's been so helpful to me. And I do really feel like I've walked in a lot of the shoes that all of our members have walked in. Being able to start off on the consulting side and the services side gives me a good foundation in terms of understanding how companies work and best practices. And then as I evolved into more of a counselor and more of an in-house IR officer, being able to take those best practices and apply them to corporations and small cap company IR has been fantastic. So, I credit a lot of what I've been able to do over the years to the NIRI network.
Oh, it's a great organization. Even though I'm the CEO, I'm going to say that. You've also been unique in that in 2009, you brought a company public and you were in that IR seat. And to some degree, we've been in this recessionary period and IPOs have been really slow to come to market. So from an IR perspective and understanding our audience here is both IR and board members, what kind of lessons can you share that others might be able to take from that?
Sure. Well, taking a company public in 2009, I think was probably one of the most challenging things that any organization can go through. And fortunately, I was able to get involved with a company that was pre-IPO and went public. And I think the key to going public around that time was the fact that it had profits. It was a profitable company that had a great growth trajectory, was highly scalable, and also was run by just terrifically talented people. I think in hindsight, the lessons learned, I think, are still very similar to what a lot of IPO companies go through, which is proper positioning from day one is key. Also making sure that people perceive the company in the right comp set. The peer group is very important. And with most young IPO companies, unless you're a very large company that's been private for a long time, you don't always have pure peers that Wall Street can value you on. So that's a challenge that Medidata had from the beginning. We did have one peer at the time, which had a very different margin profile, a very different growth trajectory, and also it wasn't really built on the latest technology. So for us, one area of focus that we needed to do for the several years after the IPO was help build out that peer group for Wall Street. And it really was tied into the overall business model and the technology platform that the company was built on.
Fantastic. Now, just a few years later, I think you have around 10 analysts covering your company. And I think for a lot of small companies, everybody wants analyst coverage because it sort of validates them and helps them to get their name out in the market. How did you develop that?
Sure. Well, IR at Medidata is very much an important strategic tool. And I've been fortunate in the fact that I've got a great board and a great management team that values IR. My CEO comes from a Wall Street background, an asset management and banking background. Our president is, our technology guru, but really understands Wall Street and understands the value of, making sure IR is done correctly. At the time of the IPO, and now we have a CFO who has had a lot of public company experience. So from the beginning, there was a very open culture from an IR perspective. We worked very hard to build the right relationships. We also knew that our business model and the industry that we operate in is fairly complex, and we need to make sure that the Wall Street investment community has the proper tools and the right education and access to get what they need in order to follow the company properly. So it has been pretty successful to date. I think the one thing I would say in hindsight is when you take a company public, and even if you've been public for a long time, more analyst coverage is not necessarily always the best thing to go for. So you have to make sure that your goals are aligned with what the company wants to do over time. And also know that analyst coverage is beyond your control. A lot of factors go into whether or not an analyst will follow the company. So the quantity is not that important, but I think the quality of the coverage is.
So at this point, you're happy with the analyst coverage you have, and you don't necessarily want more?
Well, I wouldn't say we wouldn't necessarily want more. I think, there is, the model itself on Wall Street continues to evolve. So each year we have a few analysts come in and a few analysts roll off. Some of it is due to the overall malaise that's gone on Wall Street. Others are just leaving the industry for other opportunities to start their own company. So I think it's important to have a pipeline of great quality analysts who are interested in your company. And they also have internal reasons for why or why not they would not pick up coverage at a point in time. So you just have to always keep that in mind. It's as in any kind of business, you want to have a good pipeline, a good backlog, and you want to make sure you have the right people on board.
Makes sense. One of the things you've told me is, your company by name is worldwide, and you have locations in Japan and across the globe. How do you see IR from a global standpoint? How is it developed, and how do you see it developing, and what is the importance of IR from a global perspective?
Sure. I think it's extremely important. I think, the world is continuing to get smaller and smaller, and access to capital is getting more and more complicated. So making sure that you go where the capital is extremely important, and also leveraging the company's business model. It's pretty rare that a company does not have global customers. So there is a lot of business travel that takes place in corporate America where you could leverage IR into that business travel opportunistically. I also think globally there's a great appetite for U.S. corporate interaction. So, we have executives traveling all over the world. We'd like to leverage their travel plans. We also like to have more of a focus on developing a shareholder base that is more diversified. So, I'd say 10 or 20 years ago, you might have been happy with 5% of your shareholder base being overseas. But right now, I think, that bar continues to get raised. And I think it's the smartest companies out there that are leveraging that global expansion.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the other things that I think we've seen over the past few years is how IR is evolving, and communications mediums have evolved, exchanges have evolved, everything is evolving, and you mentioned it earlier. But from a global standpoint, talk a little bit about your perception of the profession itself and the vibrancy of IR, and people that might be thinking of coming into IR. What do you think about it as a profession?
Sure. I think it's a fantastic profession, but it's not right for everybody. I think it's great for a person who has a strong love of Wall Street, has a strong understanding of financial statements, someone who enjoys reading and writing and building relationships with people. It is a very relationship-oriented business. And at the core, it's about being able to tell a balanced investment story. And I think you need to understand the qualitative and the quantitative aspects of that story in order to be really effective in IR. At the same time, I also think it's a very young industry. And what people often forget is the fact that it was born in the 50s and 60s. So, when you look at the legal profession and you look at the medical profession, we're basically in, I wouldn't even go as far as our teens. We're still very young, and there is still a lot of opportunity for more innovation to come into the business, for the best and the brightest to really look for IR as a career. And it's something that I don't think people think of as a household career. And it needs to be, more awareness needs to be developed so that the best and brightest continue to come into the business.
Yeah, and we've just seen in recent years more and more colleges start to develop curriculum in IR specifically. We've just seen a master's course or a master's program in investor relations. So I think that shows, it sort of adds to exactly what you're saying, that it's a young profession and it's continuing to develop and reach its peak.
Absolutely. And I think there have also been some, high-profile disasters where sometimes the core of investor relations, someone's sort of, gone away from the core of investor relations about telling a balanced story. And when you look at the Enrons and you look at different things that have happened in corporate America, there is more of an emphasis to make sure that IR is done in a best practice way and that people are given the proper tools. Because for a lot of people in the industry, at the core, it's been the education that NIRI has provided, but it's also been, hands-on, on-the-job training. Yeah. So it's important to have more and more of that education and professional development go on.
Well, you've seen IR develop from your seat, but many who are sitting in the boardroom, look to IR or may not know really the value of investor relations. So, how does Medidata use the board and help the board from an IR standpoint and vice versa to get the message out?
Sure. We treat IR the same way we treat our own business. And, at the core of our business, it's about bringing intelligence to our customers. And, from an IR perspective, it's about bringing that Wall Street intelligence to our C-suite as well as our board. And if that's done correctly, that allows them to really run the enterprise in the most efficient manner. It's all about bringing the right tools to them. I equate it to having a car. If you don't have the keys to the car, you don't have gas in the engine, there's going to be a problem. And I think the best companies and the most well-run companies in the world really look at IR as a strategic function, as a strategic tool in order to achieve their long-term goals.
Yep. How much, how often do you send reports to the board, maybe get in and speak to the board? What's the process in your company?
Sure. Well, it varies from year to year, but on average, once or twice a year, I like to be at the board and present to the board. And then also there's regular communications with the board. IR is integral in terms of keeping them up to speed with what's going on Wall Street, providing the research and insights into that research and the activities of IR on a regular basis. So there is a direct link between IR and the board, and that's encouraged by the management team, and I think that's a very healthy thing.
Well, that's absolutely. Well, we're out of time already, and so it's been great to sit here and chat with you. I think your focus as you come on as board chair, takes all these aspects of global IR, focus on the board, how IR is developing as a profession, and I know the energy that you bring to your job is going to carry over to the whole NIRI organization, and it's going to be an exciting year. So we appreciate you kicking off the year with us on IR Today, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next IR Today in 2013.
Join us again next time for IR Today, brought to you by the National Investor Relations Institute, dedicated to advancing global investor relations practices, and Knowledge Partner host, corporate board member.